Hi everyone, welcome to Assuaged. So today we will be talking about actionable steps that we can use to eliminate prescription drug misuse among college students.
Yeah, okay, organic base, this is what you need. Take you to the future, live a life that can be disease-free. All these toxins are taxing on our bodies, no doubt. All these GMOs and these processed foods we can live without. Yeah, wanna see you live a long time. Contaminants in our water and our food supply. From the meat to the dairy and the fish, what a shame. Not realizing that my insides were inflamed. Hold up, I know it's hard to digest, that's right. I found an organic plant-based website. I even got the app, yo, this is where it's at. Promoting a healthy life, it's time to put it on the map. Assuaged, trust you don't wanna miss. It's time for you to be your best, be your healthiest. Assuaged, trust you don't wanna miss. It's time for you to be your best, be your healthiest. Hey, Assuaged, let's go.
So first, before we even get started, I'd like to give credit to Dean Bravo, Kimberly Monahan, and myself, as well as Cynthia Murphy, the CEO of Assuaged. And before we even get started on the slides, I just wanted to let you all know that we can't keep doing what we are doing as well as we do it without hearing all of your feedback. So if you'd like, feel free to smash that subscribe button and give us a like too while you're at it. The truth is, prescription medication, it is a common drug that has all sorts of misuses, and unfortunately college campuses are also places in which they can be abused. It's also a significant public health concern since the rates they have been increasing since the 90s. It's defined, or the abuse of prescription drugs is defined as any non-medical use of a prescription drug, and this can be classified as stimulants, opioids, sedatives, and even tranquilizers. And to prevent it, this is vital. There is a huge demographic of college students who are at risk for developing addiction. All right, so let's talk about those statistics as far as college students are concerned. So according to the research, college students, they like to use prescription drugs to get high, and this is also another factor too, is they like to use them to help with academics, for sleep, anxiety, stress, oftentimes just trying to take the edge off so that way they can be more productive, and unfortunately sometimes the adverse effect comes into play. So one of the statistics is that 35% of these students, they have used prescription drugs non-medically during their college career, and of course this is a problem. 1/3 of them reported abusing these prescription drugs throughout their college career. Similarly, more than a third, or more than 33% of college students, they have reported selling or even giving away their medication to their peers. And alarmingly, half of students stated that they were persuaded to sell or give away their medication to fellow colleagues and peers. So the most common misused prescription drug, that is Adderall or Ritalin. In fact, when I was in college, I did have friends who used these drugs, and some of them were not using them for medical use. So these stimulants, they can also be referred to as amphetamines. They're typically prescribed to treat ADHD or even narcolepsy. And of course, narcolepsy, that is a sleep disorder. Stimulant misuse, it's fueled by the perception that these stimulants help with academic success, alertness, memory, and even cognition. But college students, they also report using these to enhance the effects of other substances for their partying experience. I went to Fredonia, and there was a big party scene there. In fact, it's one of the biggest party scenes in Western New York, and I'm sure you can guess that there were plenty of situations at the bar scene and even at the party scene seen, around the neighborhood campus where people were mixing different types of drug usages, whether it was, cocaine with alcohol or some other, alchemical mix, which was, very unfortunate to be able to see that these people were trying to have as much fun as they possibly could while at the same time potentially damaging their college career. And so, yeah, stimulant misuse, it is associated with heart and blood vessel issues, psychiatric problems, and drug abuse or dependence, which of course is going to have an impact on a students' ability to maintain their GPA or to make connections on campus or through internships and whatnot. And of course, stimulants combined with alcohol, this increases the risk of alcohol poisoning or other alcohol-related injuries. And one study found that more than 60% of students with proper ADHD prescription medication diverted it to other students without a prescription. This is very common. I mean, of course, 60%, shows this, but when you're actually on campus and you're seeing everything happening, around you, then it becomes a lot more apparent that this is not just a myth or just some kind of statistical, fabrication. This is actually a real thing that's going on. And so prescription opioids. Opioids have been a problem for college students and just the general population for quite a long time. This is, of course, because people don't like pain. What opioids do are they are pain relievers, but they're also they're classified as narcotic analgesics. They're typically prescribed to treat moderate to severe pain. For example, there's hydrocodone, which is, a form of it is Vicodin, or oxycodone, OxyContin, Percocet, and then there's morphine, which becomes, the body can become extremely dependent upon morphine. There's Cadian, Avenza, which is also forms of it, and then there's codeine, and of course there are plenty of other different types of prescription opioids that exist out there that are, of course, being misused and abused. And of course, rates of pain reliever usage, they have decreased among college students, but it's still a really big public health concern because it does have a very high risk for overdose and addiction, especially because the body becomes extremely dependent upon these things if used inappropriately or if used without caution. And even with caution, some people react to these drugs much differently than others, and that needs to be taken into consideration. Studies reveal that even when a client takes their opioids as prescribed, a significant size changes occur in several critical areas of the brain. So these changes might, they have been seen to remain in even months after the client stops using these opioids. And so, of course, long-term usage of these drastically changes how the brain functions due to a dependence on the drug. After a certain period of time, in college, if you're using these just for recreational use, just to take the edge off, maybe like doing it like once or twice might not have such a big impact. However, these should not be taken lightly. Oftentimes, these drugs will give you a feeling of euphoria, and it might change the way that you look at the world at some points in time, especially when you are a college student who is dealing with all sorts of problematic situations, such as trying to keep your grades up or just maintaining positive relationships with your peers. These things can certainly have a huge impact on your psyche, which might make you want to, use these so that way you can optimize your life, which in all reality, it is not optimizing your life. It just gives you the feeling of being very powerful influence in your community. So yeah, of course, opioid users, they have been seen to have higher levels of bipolar disorder, anxiety, and depression. Keep in mind that one big aspect of bipolar disorder is mania, and what mania does is it gives you a huge feeling of elation where you can just, it's like you're able to take on the world and do pretty much everything. But the truth is that's just your hormones acting up. And of course, with drugs like opioids, that can severely enhance that experience and make something which was already problematic into something which is even stronger, which cause you to try to elevate that experience as much as possible. You might not be in the right mindset to be able to prevent things from getting worse and causing addiction to rise. And of course, opioid addiction affects the mind and the body, which often causes nausea, constipation, drowsiness, overdose, and in some cases death. Sedatives and tranquilizers. Prescription sedatives, which are also called barbiturates, are prescribed to treat acute anxiety, tension, or even sleep disorders, like insomnia for one. Other prescription tranquilizers like benzodiazepines, they also work to stabilize mental health, and they're also used to treat long-term anxiety, bipolar disorder, and acute stress reactions, or even panic attacks. And some of those sedatives include Xanax, Valium, Nembutal. These also cause euphoria. Unfortunately, they also slow normal brain function, and this results in slurred speech, shallow breathing, sluggishness, fatigue, disorientation, and lack of coordination or even dilated pupils. And of course, this is just short term. The long-term effects of abuse with these, they might result on dependence on these drugs, physical and mental dependence, addiction, and seizures can be caused. And unfortunately, the adverse effect, you would think that these are being used to treat symptoms like anxiety, but they can also cause anxiety too. And that's usually the dependence part, where you are not on the drug currently and your body is saying, hey, where is this drug? I really want this. And then a lot of anxiety, a lot of cortisol starts to flood through your veins just because you're fiending for it. You need it. Your body says that this is how you function, is through this drug. Another long-term effect of this can be, a coma. You might never wake up after, or you might, fall into a coma if you perhaps overdose on this drug or something along those lines. Weakness can be caused, slurred speaking just in general, potentially for the rest of your life if you're not careful. It can cause chronic headaches. It can cause difficulty breathing, lack of coordination, and even just, general confusion.
Prescription drug abuse is a serious issue that doesn't only affect one's health, but is related to impairments in interpersonal functioning. Drug abuse impairs an individual's ability to maintain healthy relationships. It also interferes with the student's ability to succeed, as drug abusers typically have higher dropout rates and lower-level paying jobs. Opioid misuse can also result in a policy violation or drug arrest, limiting their career choices. Lower levels of success are linked to lower levels of productivity impacting the economy. Opioid abuse and misuse have overall adverse effects on a community. When drugs are involved, rates of traffic crashes, violence, property crimes, and medical assistance services increase. So what do the students think? A cross-sectional study of 312 college students aged 18 to 30 years was conducted to understand students' beliefs, perceptions, and potential intervention programs for prescription drug misuse. 72.8% of students recommended primary prevention. Primary prevention includes education and conveying or eliminating triggers relating to prescription drug misuse. Education aims to increase awareness of prescription drug misuse long-term and short-term effects, altering misunderstandings regarding academic reasons and stress management. Now we look at the criteria for preventing drug misuse and how it's failing. Harm reduction strategies have been the criteria for preventing prescription drug abuse for decades. This protocol focuses on removing barriers to intervention for college students who tend to misuse prescription drugs. These barriers include stigma, cost, and access. Harm reduction strategies emphasize peer and family support and seeking professional guidance. The majority of college students engage in prescription drugs misuse due to issues that act as triggers. Harm reduction strategies aim to remove those triggers and barriers, but is often difficult to achieve this. Therefore, it is essential to implement a program that will educate college students on alternatives to cope with their life stressors. College campuses should implement social inclusivity. Social inclusivity will allow college students to hear personal stories, engage in alternative coping mechanisms, and learn about the significance of eliminating prescription drug misuse to sustain healthy relationships. So, interventions are definitely needed. And here we look at intervention 1. Mandatory programs on college campuses before being prescribed prescription medicine. This is inspired by Miami University's Brain Booster workshops. These should be mandatory on all college campuses. In this workshop, students will learn and receive tips on how to organize their time. Students will receive tips about time management, how to reduce procrastination, the importance of a sleep schedule, hygiene, how to minimize distractions, and how to improve their study skills. Poor time management is a significant factor in why college students begin to use stimulants, such as Adderall and others. Therefore, campaigns will improve these skills as they could reduce the number of students who feel the need to use these prescription drugs. Now, colleges will offer management workshops, which is a good thing, and individual therapy sessions for those battling anxiety. Before a student receives anti-anxiety medications, they'll be introduced to relaxation techniques, guided imagery, and other behavioral techniques that may control anxiety. Before a student receives sleeping medications, he will be introduced to noise machines, and other behavioral techniques will be first introduced. Non-controlled substances such as melatonin or trazodone will also be introduced to those seeking sleep medication. Intervention number 2, support groups. Schools can implement support groups that help students who are struggling with misusing prescription drugs. Support groups would be composed of student volunteers and/or professionals that can initiate a safe space on campus so that students can receive help in a confidential manner. But here we see that many college students feel overwhelmed and stressed due to the pressure of college in general, and they turn to prescription drugs to relieve some of that pressure. Colleges should implement these support groups and teach other alternative options to relieve some of that stress that gets built up over the semester. So the support group would give information on strategies to help one eliminate the prescription drug usage, and it would highlight healthy alternatives they could implement instead. Students would interact with each other in these groups and share their experiences, helping to significantly reduce stress. The group can meet once a week to learn new relax techniques such as meditation, turns to talk about their problems, and this could be set up similar to an AA group. So we still are continuing with interventions that are needed here. And intervention number 3 involves educational campaigns. Here we see that educational campaigns will focus on preventing the use of prescription drugs altogether. Knowledge of the adverse health outcomes associated with prescription drugs is beneficial in reducing the number of college students that use prescription drugs. Being reinforced with the fact that any non-medical use of prescription drugs is damaging to one's health and life will work to reduce the number of students who begin using altogether.
The importance of educational campaigns. So educational campaigns have been vital in sparking behavior change, as the FDA's award-winning public education campaign, The Real Cost, exemplifies. It exemplifies the benefits of being exposed to the horrors of addiction. So in the end, the FDA has estimated to prevent up to 587,000 youth members from beginning smoking. So we believe if our policy proposal is implemented, we could see similar success in eliminating prescription drug misuse and abuse. So time for discussion. We're going to be starting discussion based off today's topic. There'll be some challenge questions. We encourage everyone to participate in this discussion by sharing your thoughts and ideas, and we will be reading viewers' comments. And our team of students will be discussing these responses as well as adding our thoughts. So, question number 1, are prescription drugs safer than street drugs? So, not exactly. This is a common misconception that many teens and young adults believe when experimenting with drugs. They believe that since the drug is manufactured by a pharmaceutical company, that it's safe and okay for them to take. But prescription drugs are not safe to use unless they are prescribed to you by your doctor, and they should always be taken in moderation.
I agree with that. I think prescription drugs have a place, especially for, antibiotic. However, using those in moderation when seriously needed, and trying homeopathic remedies first, I know has helped me, but sometimes it's inevitable to get a prescription to heal any types of infections. So it's just, not overdoing something. And right now, I'm going to be fully honest, I'm getting off a sleeping medication myself. I used to take 15 daily prescription drugs, and now I only take 1, and that's been for my sleep. But I'm starting to feel pressure in my liver, and so there is damage that can be done. I know it's nice to, turn the lights off and have a prescription to take away those stressors, and just being able to sleep is so hard. And Dean Bravo has mentioned melatonin. That's actually an ingredient in our Sleepy Time gummies. Last night I went without my prescription, and I did a sleepy time gummy, and I went to sleep. So I was just really amazed that something alternative actually worked, because I kind of felt reliant. I really need to get my sleep. I'm running a corporation. I'm going to school. I'm stressed out a lot. I mean, I don't show it, but it's just those inevitable life factors. We all deal with something one way or another. So it's just figuring out how to make our lives a little bit easier by implementing health measures. So what do you think, Kimberly?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think everything, as long as it's in moderation, could be good for you. But even if you are prescribed a prescription drug from a doctor, you definitely shouldn't misuse it or overuse it, because it could lead to negative health outcomes.
I think what needs to be taken into consideration here is the deep complexity to this question, and that there are a lot of things that could be looked at from it. So, for instance, I mean, there are street drugs out there that have a higher capacity for addiction in comparison to prescription drugs. And there are also street drugs out there that have a lower capacity for addiction in comparison to some pharmaceutical or drugs that you might get from your doctor or from over the counter. And of course, vice versa. It's really a matter of, of course, understanding that you do have a call to authority. So you are able to look at it and think, okay, well, an authority figure is the one who allowed this thing to be on the counter, right? For my usage or for something along those lines. Whereas, of course, with street drugs, yes, there is going to be the possibility that they could be laced with something, that they could be stronger or much more difficult to handle than what you might at first have anticipated, because you might have gotten them from a source that was untrustworthy, or you might have been feeling desperate and got it from someone that you don't know. And of course, there are a lot of risks, on that side of the spectrum. But at the same time, on the other side of the spectrum, I would, of course, urge everyone, who's watching to acknowledge the fact that just because an authority figure says something is safe, or that it's going to improve lives completely, or whatever, right? We need to take into consideration that pharmaceuticals are they're not something that's been around for a very long time. And so a lot of scientists out there, a lot of doctors, a lot of people are still in experimentation processes. We don't necessarily know everything about pharmaceuticals, and the authorities don't necessarily know everything about them either. These kinds of messages that you'll hear from the TV or commercials, advertising certain pharmaceuticals, you need to use your own intuition as well. This isn't just about making a snap decision because someone who has been studying it for a long time, or for their career, and therefore okay, I'm going to take it because this person said so. We need to trust our own bodies too, and be honest with ourselves about the fact that we're all only human. We all make our own mistakes. It takes two to tango. We've got to be careful that both the doctors and us too. We know our own bodies better than any pharmaceutical company does.
I always hit the mute button when the prescription commercials come on, because I know how unregulated those commercials are. And to my knowledge, I think the United States and New Zealand are the only ones that actually permit those kind of commercials at all. So in other countries, you find out from your medications either from the internet or from your doctor's office or whatnot. So they push these things on you, and you go in there to your doctor's office acting like you know something, like, hey, why don't you give me that stuff that they keep advertising when I watch Wendy Williams or whatever people watch, And the doctor's like, oh, okay, if you want to try it. But in truth, you're being brainwashed. It's just like when they try to force you to eat Frosted Flakes. It's the same thing. Go get the Frosted Flakes, the Fruit Loops, stuff that's full of sugar and all that. Well, these medications, a lot of them haven't been tested for very long. The FDA is way behind on testing things. And the FDA kind of is a little bit of a special interest organization of its own. As Victor says, the authority figures are not always the ones to go to. Do your own research and read between the lines. Go on there and see what's actually been researched about these products. Maybe there's something that's actually better for you that you could get instead of what they're pushing on you every 5 minutes.
I'll always say that the most important part of those commercials is when they get into the long list of side effects.
Yes, possible death. That's what you wonder.
Those always are crazy. It's like the jaw drop, it just goes on and on. The side effects are possible. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh. And then the new one too. I mean, they're even getting more specific about the side effects. And
Yeah.
I mean, they're covering their bases. CYA, cover your ass, is a common motto in the corporate branding world. And so they're just legally doing their part. But how do you not see that when you hear all those side effects? That's scary.
It is.
You know, it's interesting that, you know, they'll talk about the possible side effects, but they won't talk about the statistical probability of getting those side effects.
Right.
Out there.
Right.
Very
vague.
So question 2. Are over-the-counter drugs safe to use? So yeah, generally. However, like I said before, anything that's not used in moderation can be damaging to one's health. So over-the-counter drugs like cough syrup can be very dangerous and is often abused by teens or young adults to make what they call lean. So Advil and other ibuprofen-like drugs can actually even cause death or serious gastrointestinal bleeding and ulcers if it's not taken as directed. So these over-the-counter medications actually do hospitalize over 100,000 people yearly and kill 16,500 people in the U.S. yearly due to overdoses, wrongful combinations, and or incorrect usages. So it's very important to never use any drug, even if you get it over the counter. Be sure to check like how many milligrams they recommend, and just definitely stay safe. Definitely not to bash over the counter drugs, but keep it in moderation.
Yes, I definitely agree with over the counter drugs. They can provide some uses, although I stay away from them completely, to be honest. I don't do Motrin or Advil or any of that. We do, there's actually a homeopathic alternative to Benadryl that we use. It is the weirdest name. It's called Allergermitol. It's like a really long, confusing name. But it works. It really is a homeopathic alternative to Benadryl. You know, there's also CBD oil. Like one of our dogs was in pain, limping last night, and so we just gave her 7 sprays of some organic CBD oil, and she just like like chilling out. So, I mean, I would say there's definitely pain alternatives with the gummies too. Once we can get those out, the students will really be able to start vouching for those because they do work, as well as the hoo-ha spray. So we're really excited to get on the ball with that and have, you know, we have a multivitamin gummy, a sleepy time gummy, a Delta 8 gummy, which is kind of like a psychoactive high. Really, like if you're super stressed out, it allows you to kind of disconnect. And it's definitely something that's kind of making its way to the industry. And then we have CBDA gummies, which is got ashwagandha, and it's got more of a focal ability. We're creating all these different products right now, so we're really excited once we could get that out to our students and start hearing what they have to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that there's this chart by a website called Our World in Data, and of course it looks at the leading causes of death and of cardiovascular diseases. Of course, that's the main cause of death at I think 17.79 million from 17.79 million deaths from 1990 to 2017, and I think down at about, let's see, I'd say about number between 20 and 30 is drug use disorders, which is at about 166,612 people have died from, you know, using, you know, drugs incorrectly, or just, you know, using it wrong, or quite possibly just from using them in general. It is a very interesting thing to see that on one of the leading causes of death, you know, drug use is certainly a big factor. But, you know, of course, another thing that needs to be taken into consideration is that by drug use, it could mean anything from over-the-counter drugs to street drugs to just, you know, any kind of drugs in that matter. Interesting. Go ahead.
I was just going to add, when you said about the leading cause of death, I read once And I'm not sure if it's still at this ranking, but when I read it, it was the third leading cause of death is medical error. So I wonder if wrongfully giving prescription drugs would be counted in that. But if not, like that just shows how important it is to get a second look. That is unfortunately a major cause of death in the United States.
Well, one thing that I wanted to point out that when you look at some of the side effects of these prescription drugs, especially that you see advertised on TV, right? A lot of those side effects will be digestive issues, respiratory issues, lower respiratory, infections, all sorts of diseases. Some of them can even cause diabetes. Some of them can cause liver diseases. Some of them can, of course, cause cardiovascular diseases. Some of them cause heart attacks, stress, anxiety, all sort. Like a lot of these over-the-counter prescription drugs can cause a lot of these things, right? And so my whole thing is that when I'm looking at our world in data, and I'm looking at the leading causes of death here, and let me just read it back to you. The first is cardiovascular diseases. The second is cancers. The third is dementia. The fourth is respiratory diseases. The fifth is digestive diseases. The sixth is lower respiratory, and then it just keeps on going and going and going and going. And so I'm sitting here wondering, I wonder how much of those are caused by misuse of prescription drugs. Like I said, I'm not looking this from a conspiratorial perspective. I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking and I'm wondering, where do the dots connect here? What is causing what? And this doesn't even dementia was one, I guess, mental health problem that was looked at here. Yeah, I mean, the truth is, though, these prescription drugs can also cause all sorts of problems with mental health. So it's just something to look into. I mean, there is no blame game being made here, but at the same time, we want to make sure that the research and results of the research being done is unbiased, accurate, and used for the benefit of people and not for companies.
Educated consumers are, going to just live longer. You got to do your research on what you're taking. Don't take it on face value, and really consider, is this medicine the right thing I need to be doing for myself? Our body is our temple, so if you really want to be drugging yourself with something that you could probably live without, or maybe find a natural alternative to, people really need to think about what they're using.
Your body is a temple.
Oh.
All right, so question 3. Do different age groups use different prescription medications? Painkillers are most commonly abused by teens, typically by younger teens. Stimulant abuse is most often seen among teens and college students, and the issue of combining prescription drugs with alcohol just makes them even more dangerous. Consumption of alcohol dramatically increases a person's potential for adverse reactions to pharmaceutical drugs.
I do agree that different age groups could potentially abuse different types of drugs. I do know that Adderall, Ritalin, ADHD is among one of the most commonly diagnosed disorders among everyone. Adults, college students, a lot of autism spectrum. That's just something that kind of ties into being able to relax, being able to focus, being able to really have that mental stability, if you will. I feel like people with ADHD, they're so gifted, like seriously. So when these drugs are prescribed, I feel like in so many ways things can go wrong.
Question 4. What can parents or guardians do to help prevent their child from using prescription drugs? So one thing parents can do is educate. You can educate yourself about medications that kids may be abusing and share this information with others who are in contact with your children, school admin, coaches, or counselors. Also, it's really important to communicate with your kids, discuss the subject with your teenagers, highlight that the abuse of medications can be lethal, and set clear expectations with your teenagers, letting them know under no circumstance should they ever take medication without your knowledge. And 3, safeguard medications at your house and other places. So your healthcare provider, any medications prescribed family have a potential use. And you can even take inventory of the prescriptions or over-the-counter medications you have in your home.
Yeah, I agree that prescription medications in children, I mean, keeping those out of their reach. There's a lot of depression and bullying, and you commonly see that's the first way out that a child who's suffering from mental illness, especially, is going to resort to maybe going after those prescription drugs. And if it's coping with it or even finding a way out leading to suicide, could be really sad. So keeping those away and not relying on them. I mean, it's a short-term alternative that I think a lot of us forget to consider.
There are individuals who have extreme developmental and intellectual disabilities who are living in homes that are where people are taking care of them, giving them showers and basically just assisted living in this case. So that, like I said before, this could be people who are having intellectual disabilities, but it could also be people who are experiencing things like like being senile, just being old, or just some types of situations like having MS, people that are just not really able to function, right? One of the things that always kind of scared me, right, when I've seen these kinds of things, in action, where you have individuals who have an entire gourmet, if you will, of prescription drugs that they have to take throughout the day in order for them to function to some extent throughout the day without having meltdowns or breaking down or bad digestive issues like diarrhea or just anything like that. When I see that, though, I can't help but wonder whether the amount of drugs, prescription drugs, that are being essentially fed to these individuals is as necessary as it is, portrayed to be. Whenever I see at least, 10, 20 drugs or pills, just like in separate cups together, all for, one period of time for the day, and then that whole thing is being done for another period of time during the day, and then this is repeated, day in and day out. And I just wonder if that really is the solution for these individuals. I mean, life is an extremely, varyingly debilitating thing. And this world contains so many different degrees of problems, and it's just so unfortunate that the way in which we try to solve these kinds of things is by just giving people these external, drugs or just other kinds of things, right? I wonder if maybe we gave them less drugs. I don't know. See, the thing is, I can't say because I've never actually really worked with those kinds of individuals before, so perhaps they are helping them. I can't say. I don't know, and it does make me very upset to see that their situation might be so debilitating that they really do need all of that stuff in order to function properly or adequately throughout the day.
Yeah, so great question. What effects do stimulants have on the body? Stimulants often elevate blood pressure and the heart rate. When abused in high doses, stimulants can cause a dangerously high body temperature and worse cardiac arrest brought on by an abnormal heartbeat. What does everyone think?
It's just scary that the prescription drugs that so many people are prescribed have these capabilities to just hurt your body. I do think it could be helpful, but I don't know. I just feel like there are alternate routes to treat different diagnoses that don't involve prescription medication. I think they should be used more and become more popular, because I think it really can actually help someone not to just treat it, but to get rid of it, improve it.
Yeah, so overuse of stimulants is no good, and the same thing that is used for ADHD is also they also qualify as stimulants, as Adderall, Ritalin, and all those other medicines. And a lot of times, especially with small children, they're over-prescribed. Doctors are very quick to prescribe Ritalin to children, and they don't really analyze what that child is eating. If they're eating sugar frosted flakes in the morning, it's more than likely the refined processed sugar that's causing the hyperactivity. And if you just change the kid's diet, you probably will find that the kid will calm down. So they don't treat the cause. They just write the drug, and the kid's still going to eat the sugar frosted flakes, but now he's taking Ritalin. So it's not the right approach in any sense.
Not to go around finger pointing or blaming anyone, but I think a lot of people fail to take into consideration that it might not be the kid that's the problem. It might be the parent. That's the problem. I mean, yeah, they might not have a mental disorder. They might just be suffering through some kind of PTSD. There's something, and PTSD often manifests itself in it very similarly to a lot of other mental disorders, like anxiety, bipolar disorder, certain degrees of narcissism, or even a borderline personality. A lot of these things kind of like blend into one another, but these kinds of, I guess you could say, symptoms, they masquerade themselves as other mental disorders when in actuality sometimes they're really just symptoms of PTSD. And that could just be, solved through proper parenting, proper amount of love, proper feeling of security in their lives, proper realizing that, they do have a voice and that their opinions, as children, shouldn't be so stigmatized because, you're just a child, what do you know? The thing that upsets me the most, I guess I would have to say, is that there are plenty of children out there who are perfectly normal children. They just behave differently than, some of the other children in class. And some teachers may be quick to say that, that child is a problem and that they might have like ADHD, and they'll go to the parents and they'll tell the parents that like your child is misbehaving in class. The parents, not being educated on these subjects, might just take the teacher's word for it, or they'll go to the doctor and then the doctor will tell the parents that, okay, yeah, your child has a behavior disorder or something like that, and then they'll just be having the kid popping pills just to deaden him, essentially, so that way he, quote unquote, behaves during class. But in all reality, he could potentially have just been a gifted child who didn't like the rigid structure of the education system that he was a part of, and had an intuitive understanding of the fact that this was something that was not going to, I guess you could say, stimulate him. So on an intellectual and even emotional level. I mean, there's just so many factors to take into consideration. I'm not sitting here saying that that's all it is. Sometimes these children really do have a mental disorder that might need to be treated through some kind of drug program. Oftentimes, we don't fully understand what we're dealing with as a society.
I'll just add to that real quick. As Cynthia was saying, people or kids, whatever, getting drugged and kind of snuffing out their life by doing that. You may have a very gifted child who's just bored to death, and because they're bored to death, they're going to act out because they're done with their homework, so they start talking, they start jumping around. The parents don't talk to the kids, so parents need to really speak to their kids, not throw their kids in the corner with the video games and then watch their favorite show or watch football. They need to carve out time to talk to those kids to get to know them, and they may find out that kid actually might be gifted in some way, as I think you said, Victor. And as Cynthia said, that you don't want to snuff out their light. They may be hypersensitive for a reason. That they might be just hyper-brained. They just might be brilliant in some way that you're not discovering, and you're not fostering that in them. And so they're bored. They're sick of everything. They're tired of it, and so they're acting out.
Yeah, I've talked to some teachers actually who they would actually, they would quit their job because of how bad some students can be. Elementary students to high school students, the whole gamut, and they would essentially leave because they would be traumatized because of the environment that they were a part of, where the students were just so unruly that they were incapable of just actually being able to teach them. I think another part of children going through these kinds of situations is that it can be a cultural issue too. Every, and by culture I just mean like the classroom culture. When you're surrounded by a certain number of people for a certain period of time, and you get to know them, and you're kind of like forced into like a classroom or almost like a little box with them, that can potentially cause students to almost like gang up on the teachers. And in that case, that can be a potential problem too. I mean, there's just so many factors to be looked at, whether it's drugs that are causing these situations to unfold, or the lack of drugs causing the situations to unfold. Is anybody's guess, but to go around and just slap drugs in people's faces isn't really going to be the solution that we're looking for.
So, can prescription drugs be harmful even when someone is prescribed them and does not misuse them? A study from a prestigious medical center has declared that many common drugs, from antibiotics to antidepressants, have a significant impact on the gut microbiome. Prescription drugs can disrupt the delicate balance of bacterial populations. Researchers state that taking prescription medicine, even when prescribed, could increase a person's risk of developing various health issues. The negative of health issues that are caused by prescription medications may include intestinal infections, obesity, and antimicrobial resistance. I do think in cases that prescription drugs, as I was saying earlier, I have this sleeping medication that I'm eliminating, and I know there are uses for various medications, but we cannot become reliant on them because they're not natural. They're not meant to be put into our bodies for a long period of time. There's natural remedies, herbs, anything that comes in the form of a plant and whole foods, I would say is safe. Anything that comes from a box, prescribed medication, I mean, we were talking about all those side effect warnings on the television commercials, so it's apparent what that means. Question number 7. Let's discuss amongst ourselves. Do you guys trust prescription medication? And kind of just ringing in on what's true with what I was saying is that there are appropriate uses for medications. They're meant to substitute in a way to allow us to adjust, but long-term use could be very dangerous. For example, I was watching a show yesterday on HBO Max called What's Killing Me, and there was a man on there that has Huntington's disease, which is a very rare disease, and he was on all these prescription medications. He went from being a heroic doctor to an absolute crazy person, and he murdered his father. He was misdiagnosed, and once he stopped the medication, that was the trigger that led him to make a very irresponsible decision, which I believe was his conviction was overturned, and he was released on the basis of his disease being a primary source of why, and the prescription drug of why that happened.
I want to point out what we're not doing here is demonizing the pharmaceutical companies here. In truth, when we look back in retrospect at the progress that we have made as a civilization when it comes to keeping people healthy and extending people's lives, and going from a world in which the average lifespan was, I think, from like 40 to 50 years to now I think it's anywhere between 70 and 80. As a species have done incredible things, and pharmaceutical drugs are one of those extremely beautiful inventions. Maintaining a healthy skepticism about their positives and their negatives is essentially what is going to allow our civilization to improve them. Simply believing in something's good usage just because an authority figure told you that this is good for you, or just because like your doctor said that this is good for you and that you need to take this, whatever. Like, I'm not saying, or we're not saying, that is something that you should immediately dismiss and say, no, I don't want to take this because I don't believe in doctors or whatever. Like that's not the right way to go about it. The best thing that we can do is to acknowledge that we're all human, and that we all make mistakes. And the scientists who create these medicines or these prescription drugs, they are also human, and that they're still in the process of discovering these drugs, and they're doing the best they can to ensure that they are healthy, and that they are trying to eliminate as many side effects as they possibly can. However, there are people out there who have more monetary incentives involved. The issue that we're trying to express here is that because we live in a world which is governed by money, we have to be more clear about what is and isn't good for us, and that somebody else's opinion about whether or not we should do something should not be our go-to. We should be educated is the bottom line here. So I trust them, but it just depends on it depends on what degree of trust we're talking about here. If it's blind trust, then that's just, in my opinion, very naive. But if it's educated, if it's trust with a healthy amount of skepticism, then that's, I believe, what we should shoot for.
All right, finishing up. That was an amazing, provoking conversation once again, and we already have all these ideas of future presentations, what we want to cover. We aim to inform, inspire, educate, and empower you to make better health decisions for yourself and your family and your friends. So if you could watch our Be Your Highest campaign video, Stop the Hate with Delta 8. It costs us a lot of time and money and resources to make these educative materials, so we would really appreciate your support. It means the world to us.
Thank you, everyone.
Stop the hate, stop it. It's Delta 8. Look at us. Yeah. To your highs. You see us in the sky. We still flying, let's go.
Stop the hate with Delta 8. Stop the hate with Delta 8. Be your highest boom and elevate to the moon. Stop the hate with Delta 8. Stop the hate with Delta 8. Be your highest boom and elevate to the moon. Lean to the side and rock it. Be your highest. Ooh, we poppin'. Hit the site, go do some shopping. CBD got plenty options. Ooh, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. I love my gummies. Ooh, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. Cause they so yummy.
Yummy gummies, tag a friend, tag a lover, tag a Delta 8, come discover. Yummy, make it pop, feels so good, I'm on top, taste so good you can't compare. Vegan gummies, Delta 8, premium ingredients, Delta 8, vegan gummies, taste so good you can't compare. I don't even wanna share, no. Delta 8 gummies, we the flyers, bunny. You can be your best, Delta. You can be your best, ass.
Stop the hate with Delta 8. Stop the hate with Delta 8. Be your highest boom and elevate to the moon. Stop the hate with Delta 8. Stop the hate with Delta 8. Be your highest boom and elevate to the moon. Lean to the side and rock it. Be your highest. Ooh, we poppin'. Hit the site, go do some shopping. CBD got plenty options. Ooh, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. I love my gummies. Ooh, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. Cause they so yummy. Be your healthiest. Why? So you can live longer. Keep on fighting every day with Delta 8. You getting stronger. We believe in you, but you gotta believe in yourself. Don't try to do it all alone. Be your highest is here to help. We got your back, got your front, rocking side to side. Gummies help you relax. Now you catching vibes. It's for all the vets all across the globe. We feel your pain. Trust us when we say we know. Let's go. Stop the hate with Delta 8. Stop the hate with Delta 8. Be your highest boom and elevate to the moon. Stop the hate with Delta 8. Stop the hate with Delta 8. Be your highest boom and elevate to the moon. Lean to the side and rock it. Be your highest. Ooh, we poppin'. Hit the site, go do some shopping. CBD got plenty options. Ooh, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. I love my gummies. Ooh, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. Cause they so yummy.
You can be your best, Delta. You can be your best ass. You can be your best version of yourself, Delta 8. You can be your best, Delta. You can be your best 8. You can be your best version of yourself.
Stop the hate with Delta 8. Stop the hate with Delta 8. Be your highest boom and elevate to the moon. Stop the hate with Delta 8. Stop the hate with Delta 8. Be your highest boom and elevate to the moon. Lean to the side and rock it. Be your highest. Ooh, we poppin'. Hit the site, go do some shopping. CBD got plenty options. Ooh, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. I love my gummies. Ooh, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it. Cause they so yummy.
Stop the hate, stop it.
Thank you so much for joining us today and our team of students at Assuaged. I would like to thank Kimberly Monahan, Dean Bravo, and Victor Schmitt-Bush for such a compelling discussion today, and look forward to seeing you next week. Bye!
Start with Delta 8. Be your highest boom and elevate to the moon. Lean to the side and rock it. Be your highest. Ooh, we poppin'. Hit the site, go do some shopping. CBD got plenty.